I want to welcome you to the Business Growth Podcast, and today I have the special guest, Rob Burns from prReach. And the reason why I got in touch with Rob Burns for this episode is so that you as a listener can figure out the best way to handle press for your startup or for your business. And so we're going to talk about good press, bad press, and the ways to be able to communicate with that audience. So welcome to the podcast, Rob.
Hey, how you doing?
Doing great. So you have been a business owner for a number of years, both offline and online, and you decided to jump full on into creating a pretty powerful press release company called prReach. Tell us a little bit about your transition to prReach and why you started it.
Sure. So way back in the day, in the ancient times before the internet, we actually owned a publishing slash marketing media company called Banyan Publishing. And we primarily did stuff for hotels and resorts, and we had pretty much all the national hotel chains. And we actually handled their PR and their marketing and their sales materials and all that kind of stuff. And we actually had a building like a 5,000 square foot printing plant where we printed all their stuff for them. And when September 11th hit, it pretty much just wiped out that whole business. Like every CFO from every major hotel chain called like 2 days later and said, nobody's traveling, so cancel all our contracts. So we literally shut down the business in probably less than 30 days, just close the whole thing down. So I was really looking for something to do. And it was kind of an oddball thing, but I had in college, I'd take a semester off every now and then. I'd just go to Baja and I'd go surfing. I'd just disappear for 2 or 3 months. And I used to stay with the families down there. And some of the villages and stuff, like back then, like people were they weren't so jaded on, American tourists, especially further down south in Baja. And people just adopt you, and you could just stay there and kind of just melt in with the whole family, the whole culture. And so I'd always kind of buddy up with the mom and cook with her. And I started collecting all these hot sauce recipes. So when I got back, I'd start making them for friends, and pretty soon I started getting requests for I'd be making like 50 gallons every couple of months just from people wanting hot sauce. So when I shut down Banyan Publishing, my friends kind of talked me into starting a hot sauce company, and so I started this hot sauce company, and it's just when we were just starting to do websites and internet type stuff for our hotel clients, and so I said, well, I'm just gonna go ahead and try and sell this online. So what I did is I actually sold it by the case. And back then, it was so new that we didn't even have a shopping cart. We actually people would just mail us checks in. And so in building that out, it got pretty popular, and I wound up ranking #1 for. I started kind of teaching myself SEO, ranking #1 for hot sauce and some really competitive phrases. And I wound up selling that company. And so after I sold the company, there was all these other people saying, well, hey, I want you to do, for me, what you did for your hot sauce company. And so that kind of started my SEO career. And so I've been doing SEO and internet marketing, kind of I've been the guy kind of behind the big guys for a long time, where I'm actually doing their stuff, and, a lot of marketing campaigns and product launches and things like that. And last couple of years when, Panda and Penguin and all those good things hit. Like the SEO was still really good and it still worked, but it was just such a pain as far as client base that because everybody's like, oh, you just got my site banned, and Webmaster Tools said it. I've got bad links, and so I had a link building service, and so I just wound up just shutting it down because I was spending more time just doing customer service, convincing people that it wasn't me, it was costing me more to just service the people than it was to actually do the SEO for them. So I started looking at well, what's the next big thing? And what I wanted to do is I wanted to start a company that, I wanted to look at an industry where there was a vulnerability in the market, and there was room for growth, and there was a place where if somebody came in with some disruptive technology that it would really kind of shake things up. And then also I wanted something, since I've been doing internet marketing, and I wanted something that was more sustainable. So it wasn't like a big launch and you make a bunch of money and then all of a sudden you got to figure out your next thing. I wanted to build like a business. And so I actually kind of went back to my roots to PR and media. And I started looking at some of the PR companies, and they're kind of like publishing companies are, where they're so old and they're so kind of ingrained in their foundation of what they do, that they kind of dictate to people how you're supposed to do things. Whereas nowadays online, the customer dictates how they want to how they want to view something, how they want to interact with somebody, and nobody was doing that. And so that's why I built prReach, and I did a couple things that were a little different. First I built the platform so it's just super flexible. So if something stops working, then I just take it out, or if I need to add something on there, then I can just change it quite a bit. And two of the main things that I did differently than most PR companies is we still have the same tier 1 syndication like all the big ones do. So we go through Associated Press and Reuters and LexisNexis and all that good kind of stuff. But the other thing is I built in kind of a social mention platform. So every press release that goes out, we have kind of a custom feed that goes to this huge network of social media sites, and embeds that press release in all these social media sites. So now you have all these social mentions point back. And then the biggest thing really is it's a video press release. So every press release we do, actually, we have a virtual newsroom with an anchor person that will read that press release off. And that does a couple things. Well, one is, if anybody out there does video marketing, you know how powerful that is. So now you have your own video that you can use to market. The second is every press release in the world has somebody talking. When somebody sends out a press release, it's them talking about themselves. With my press release, now you have somebody that's kind of an authority figure talking about you, pre-vetting you. So it almost gives you that one step up, where instead of you trying to pitch your stuff, you have somebody else talking about your product or your business or your service.
At what stage of the game should business owners be thinking about doing a press release or gearing up to position themselves for that?
Really, any stage. I mean, if you're in the pre-planning stage, you kind of want to prime the pump. So, putting notices out just about, the company that you're about to form is a great way. So, you're already creating buzz and you're creating traction. And there's really two different kinds of releases. There's a press release, and then there's a news release. A press release is really pointed towards journalists, and so if you want to get on the news and get in the media, and then a news release is really, and this is something that we really focus on too, is because it used to be you would send out a press release, and you were trying to get a journalist to pick that up and write about you and say something good about you, and sometimes they did and sometimes they didn't. With a news release, you can actually kind of just circumnavigate the journalist and go to the actual person that you're really looking to talk to. And so that's where they're embedded in different websites, or they get picked up, or they have SEO value, different ways around that, or even through the social media channels. So the people that you actually intended to see it at the very end of the chain, those are the people that are going to see it first. So and we're really a hybrid of both. So if you want to focus on journalists, you can do that, because we do go through Associated Press and a lot of the big syndications. And you want to write your press release a little bit. You can write it as a hybrid where you're trying to get both of them, and sometimes that works. But I really say you should focus on, if you're trying to get journalists, you should write a certain way for a journalist, and if you're trying to contact with the actual end user that you're trying to connect with, you might want to write a press release a little bit differently that way too. And we can get into that if we have time.
Sure, definitely we can. So years ago, I owned a publishing company, and we actually made the Yahoo Finance with one of our press releases.
Yeah.
So we got picked up, and it gave us a lot of like a spike in traffic, which was kind of nice. And this was, what was this, like 5-6 years ago? And so how has press releases and that nature of the business evolved in the last 5 or 6 years? Because it's obviously, with technologies and everything else, things rapidly change. So how have things evolved over the last couple of years?
Yeah, I would say primarily, I would say about 6 years ago, up until about 6 years ago, it was really trying to get a hold of journalists, and you're trying to contact the journalists, and it was really kind of an old school, you'd hire somebody for 10 grand at a New York PR agency or something, and they do a campaign and try to contact journalists and get you on the news and in the media. And then when PR Web came along, they came out as kind of I know it's okay to talk about the competition, but because they actually did really kind of change the industry, where they said, well, we're an online press release company, and that's where they really were more of a news release instead of a press release, where there's saying, well, look, we're going to try and get in front of the actual audience instead of trying to get the attention of the journalist. And so that's where the news releases, I would say, are much more prevalent. Some of the larger companies, and I think it's a big mistake, because almost anybody can get on news. It's actually pretty darn easy to do. And I can tell you about a whole story about my wife and how we built a pretty high 6-figure business just doing that on a business that nobody even knew existed. So some of the bigger companies that were branding companies, they would really try to get on the news, and then the smaller mom and pops, they would do the more of the news release and try to get in front of the actual person. And some of the press release companies, branded themselves as SEO press release companies, which is kind of putting a big target on their, on their backs. And I think a lot of those kind of got wiped out just because they were saying, hey, we are the press release, the SEO press release company. And they had these giant splog networks, and they were pretty easily exposed, and those all got shut down. So now I really think it's kind of evened out, and most of the successful press release companies are hybrids of the both, and that's kind of what we're trying to do. And then we're also trying to bring in, basically our goal is eyeballs. So whether it's SEO value or actually direct traffic value or media traffic. So we're trying to go after all of them, and we're trying to use every kind of media source available. So that's probably what separates us a little bit more than some of the other ones. And I think that's going to be a trend with most of the press release companies that are out there now.
How much, I've interviewed guests that they built their business solely off of content. So for example, I did an interview with Dan Norris and Alex McClafferty from WP Curve, and 100% of their business is built off of content.
Right.
So what's the level or the necessity to have good quality content?
I think it's imperative, actually. Okay. Gone are the days, with the spun articles and the 500-word articles. And I would say the worst thing you could ever do is write a 500-word article, because I think some of the search engines, Google's algorithm, just because all of those people that had those pre-written, kind of spammy articles that are just written for keywords, they all sold them as 500-word, chunks. So I think there's kind of a penalty for doing something like that. But I think the search engines. Are you familiar with latent semantic indexing?
I'm not. I know what the term is. Yeah.
So basically, I guess you would look at it like artificial intelligence. So Google can really pretty much figure out what you're about just based on the quality of your article. So not just the keywords. So we've actually ranked pages for a certain keyword that did not have that keyword on that page at all anywhere, but it was about that subject. It was about a related subject. So Google's so sophisticated that they can actually tell what your site's about or what your page is about without even having that actual keyword on there. So to me, that says you really, really need to have quality content. You need to be engaging. Some of the bigger factors are time on page. So the longer somebody's on your site or on that page, then the higher ranking factor you're going to get as far as just actual SEO value. And that's the good thing about having the video thing, is because you can embed that video on your site now. And now somebody's going to stay on that page for 3 to 5 minutes watching the video. So that's a huge ranking factor on its own. So quality content, I think, is probably the most important thing. When people ask me SEO advice now, I just say, don't even think about SEO. Just think about, what is going to engage your customer. What are you going to write about that is going to keep somebody on that page and just keep them mesmerized? Because if you do that, then I think it's game over.
Okay, so let's drill into some of the pieces of your business and what you're doing. So you look at it and you say, first off, we're going to create quality content.
Right.
What other things are you focusing on to grow your company? And then what other things do you help business owners do to grow their companies?
For growing my company?
Mm-hmm.
That's really good. Hustle.
Okay. But what does that mean?
Well, I think with a lot of companies, most people have more opportunities than they can actually really handle, and they just don't take advantage of all the opportunities they have. And for me, I really look at kind of as far as growing my company, I look at where my assets are. I look at the most valuable assets, and I tap those first. Whether it's people or connections or internet properties or skill sets or employees, and I really look at kind of that 80-20 rule, and I'd say on a weekly basis, I really review opportunities and assets, and I don't know many people that do this, but I'll go through everything that I say. Well, here's this can bring me business, or this is here's an opportunity, or I spoke with this person and they wanted to do a webinar, or they wanted to have a white label version of what I do built out or something like that. And so I'll go after the kind of the top 20%, and then I'll usually have my employees go after the the rest of the 80%, some of the interns and trainees and things like that. So for me, it's like I don't leave any stone unturned, and I go after my top 20 as far as different opportunities, and I review it on a weekly basis as far as what are my opportunities. So
you say that probably most businesses have enough business out there available for them.
I think so.
But they don't apply. They don't actually go for it. Why do you think that they don't go for it? Because we hear that the typical person saying, "Oh, things aren't working out for me," or whatever other scenario. Yeah. So
I heard that so many times, and then I'll talk to them and I'll start asking some questions, and I'm like, there's like just so much money on the table, and they either just don't want to implement. I think a challenge with entrepreneurs is we all kind of have that same kind of brain where everything's wonderful and there's so much, we have these brilliant ideas, but actually executing is much different. I mean, the people that execute, I know people that just have far inferior products or businesses and even skill sets, but they execute and they look at everything and they look at every opportunity, and then they actually do something, just moving forward. I mean, they talk about millionaires, and most millionaires aren't actually smarter than the average person, but they just do it. They just do stuff. And I think with entrepreneurs is a lot of entrepreneurs are big dreamers and they have great ideas, but actually, setting up systems and streamlining things and building it and running it like a business and, not just a dream, those are much different things. I mean, I don't see how, I haven't seen anybody that's had a hard time that really, it wasn't really their responsibility for, them being in the place where they're at. So
you
whether
talk about
successful or not successful.
Yeah, you talk about the execution, getting things done. I would love to drill into like the actual, go a little bit more granular for you.
Sure.
And say, what are those things that you execute on? Because you had a hot sauce company and you sold it. You've had SEO companies. Now you've got this press release company. So there's a pretty solid track record. And for our listeners, it would really help them to hear about the actual deliverables or the things that you're executing on, so they can look at their checklist and say, okay, this is something I'm doing, or saying, wow, that's something I should be doing. I should give up my, staying on Twitter all day kind of thing, or crap like that.
Yeah. Okay. So that's a great point, because that stuff will just kill you. I mean, back in the day, I was just like, I felt like I had to be just connected with everything at all times, or else I'm going to miss something. I'm going to miss an opportunity. And, and I had my Skype open all the time. I had my, back when people actually used Twitter. I guess people still do. I've kind of checked out of it. And Facebook, like Facebook's just a big black hole. If you can just get sucked into. And email. Like, everybody thinks they got to just keep their email and stay on top of their email. And I actually use this thing. It's called Unroll.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, and it's pretty good. It was really kind of counterintuitive in the beginning, but it just takes all. And I had like, was it 497 email subscriptions? Yeah, because I was always following people's copywriting. So anytime somebody had something that I knew was a fairly good copywriter, I subscribed to their email list. And so I had like 497 subscriptions. So I just took everything and I just put it on Unroll, and Unroll every morning just pops up and it says, it's all in one page on one file. And I know those things are things that aren't imperative. So it automatically just kind of puts it, and now I don't even look at my Unroll. It just goes there and I don't even look at it. So I would say give yourselves designated times and time frames for it, because a lot of people, it's part of their business to be connected on social media and to do email follow-ups. But I have my assistant now do most of my email follow-ups. Like I barely even look at my email anymore. And that was really hard for me because I'm like, oh, I'm missing out on something, or I'm missing out on an opportunity. But usually if there's something that's really big and glaring, then that gets forwarded to me and then I deal with it. And the same with social media is I'll usually give myself designated times, and most people do even less than this. I mean, they're really productive people, but I usually have about 3 times a day where I'll go in and I'll look at my Facebook and see if there's any messages. I'll jump on Skype real quick and I'll see, if anybody's trying to contact me there, and then I'll check my email, and I'll usually do that. But I give myself a 15-minute time limit to do that, and I'll usually do that 3 times a day. Some people do that once a day. So that I would say, as far as just that will make you money, because then when you're doing that other stuff, that it distracts you so much. You don't ever think about those opportunities, or how to what are my assets that I need to capitalize on, and how do I build my business, how do I grow my business, how do I take care of my employees, things like that. So once you kind of cut that, then you'll probably see a 25% jump in your revenue just from not screwing around on that junk all the time.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about the distraction, and it's true that there's just a lot of noise in there. And especially if someone tags you, like, you feel this unwritten obligation to like get in and answer or whatever.
Oh yeah.
And so you've talked about this distraction and pulling yourself away from that. Now, to grow your business, you say you're very content focused. You've got a team. What other deliverables, or what other things are you actually putting your time into? Saying, if I do X, I know that I'm going to get this result. What is that?
Yeah. Well, another thing I do, and I don't know if it's necessarily exactly what you're asking, but I look at my time, and I value my time at about $300 an hour. I figure, because I need to make to hit my goal, I need to be about $300 an hour, and that's figuring out like a 12-hour day for me. So anything that can be done for half of that, then I will usually outsource it and farm it out. And any task that doesn't make money, then I'll either create a system or somebody else that will handle that. So my whole job is to bring in money, and that's what I do. And so that's as far as setting up kind of a system or a money making thing is if you look at and you could kind of review yourself throughout the day and say, is what I'm doing, is this making me money, or is this is this burning up time, or is this somebody else can do this for less than whatever I'm worth. And I'd say if you're starting out in a business, it's kind of a good benchmark is like $50 an hour. So if you can get somebody to do it for less than that, then you're probably going to make money by having them do that and setting up a system, as opposed to you doing something, because then you're spending 90% of your time making money and not and figuring out ways to make money, or looking for closing up gaps that are costing you money. So that's my one big kind of money making thing that I do. So.
Did you always have that insight, or did it take you a while to get to that point?
No, I didn't at all. I mean, I used to think I had to do everything, and I tried to do everything, and I just hit a wall because I was like, I can't make any more money. I can't do any more stuff, and I can't even think about and all this stuff was just kind of falling by the wayside that I knew that if I would have addressed would have brought in more revenue, would have grown the company. But I just tried to do everything, and it's so hard because you think, especially when you're a startup and money's tight, to farm that stuff out, or you're just going, well, man, I'm spending money, so I don't have any money to spend. But it's almost like you just can't afford not to do that, because if you really want to grow, if you really want to scale, and I would look forward to. I mean, I usually look. I have kind of like I said, I do a weekly review. I also do a monthly review, like a monthly goal. I do a quarterly goal. I do a year, and then I do a five-year plan. It's like, where am I going to be in 5 years? Where am I going to be in a year? What I want to accomplish this week, what I want to accomplish this month, and this quarter. And it sounds pretty, kind of like that's a lot of work and it's a pain in the ass, but it's really, really effective, because you just don't know how far off track you can get, and then you just adjust all those goals as your business changes, because it will change. So.
That makes perfect sense what you're talking about. So let's get into the actual structure of prReach.
Sure.
And that's a different model than your SEO or a content, or maybe see people, they went through the fad of AdSense money or whatever.
Right.
So you have these metrics that you say, I want to reach this benchmark.
Right.
What metrics are you paying attention to prReach? Are you looking at your monthly recurring revenue, or what other metrics are you looking at? And are you saying this is where we need to be? And what are you doing what metrics are you focusing on?
Right. So for me, there's kind of there's a monetary goal of saying, okay, well, here's where we're at, and then here's where I need to be. And I also tie those in with some of the growth things. Like we're about to move our offices, and I need to build out a new studio, and so I need to buy all completely new equipment, and I'm adding some staff. So you kind of have to look at two things. You have to look at, well, this is where I want to be, money wise, but then and then how do I get there, and how much is that going to cost me? So I know to hit my next plateau as far as volume, that I actually need to scale up as far as my staff and my my location, because right now we actually split locations with another company. We have like a big green screen studio, and we use it about 3/4 of the time, and then they use it also. But we're getting so busy now that we're almost using it 100% of the time. So we need to kind of move and grow. So I need my next benchmark is about 50 grand in 2 months extra above what we're doing to pay for the build out for a new studio and a location move kind of thing.
Okay.
And then before that, it was, well, I needed to add on a full-time video editor. So, we need to do this much volume. And I actually, so I said, before I can, hire somebody full-time, this is what we need to do, on a continuity basis, so I know I can consistently pay this guy. And I had a 3-month goal for that, and I beat it in about a month and a half, and I beat it by about 50% over what I was planning on doing. So yeah.
Does getting that granular and knowing, let's just use an example. Say, okay, to be able to hire this video editor, I need to add 5,000 to my monthly recurring revenue.
Right.
As an example, does that give you the fuel to actually hustle and make that happen, or?
Absolutely, because a danger, and back in the early days, it's kind of an entrepreneurial disease, I think, is, again, it's all kind of airy-fairy dreamy, but when you break your business down to a math problem, which most people hate, because we're dreamers and not accountants, and anytime I do talk to my bookkeeper, just makes me want to throw up.
Yeah.
Just because it's like, oh, his numbers, it's freaking me out. But once you start adding that to your discipline, then everything changes, and it actually just makes things so simple, because you're saying, well, okay, I need to raise the bar this much because I need to do this, or I want to make this much more money, so I really need to make 30% more than that, so I can build up my marketing plan or my staff up to handle that kind of volume. So once you figure all those things out, then that's where you go back to your 80/20 and you look at what are my what are my assets? Where can I make that money the fastest? And what are my opportunities? And then you go after those opportunities. So this is my biggest opportunity where I can make $5,000 a month more. So let's do that. And that's where you really break things down. And so, those are really that's your job as an entrepreneur, is to grow your company. Not to actually be the company, if that makes sense.
Yeah. One of my favorite not CEOs, but called venture capitalist, Paul Graham. He runs the Y Combinator, and he clearly says that the role of the CEO is to make sure that there's money in the bank.
Yeah, that's it.
I mean, that it really is. So, as you've grown your business, what have been the most difficult things that you've had to say no to? Because as you start and you're hustling, you say yes to a lot. As you grow, you have to start saying no more. So what have the hardest things you've had to say no to?
Actually, for me, that was one of my biggest things, because up until that point, I was always partnering with maybe 5 or 6 different people on 5 or 6 different projects all at the same time, and everybody, and all these people would come to me, hey, I'm starting to work on this. You want to be part of this, and before I would just say yes to everything, and with this one, I decided I really want to run this like a business. I mean, it's something that's built so that 5 or 6 years down the road, somebody that doesn't even understand internet marketing would be able to buy this company. So it's a sellable company, and so I made a promise to myself. I said, I'm not going to do any bright shiny objects at all. All I'm going to do is prReach. I'm 100% vested in it. And this is what I'm going to focus on. And I've had people who are like, well, hey, let's start a content writing company, which is 90% of the people that buy press releases, the first thing they ask is like, hey, can somebody write a press release for me? And it's so tempting to say yeah, but then again, that's another startup business, and it just takes that much more energy away from your core business. And so, instead of doing something like that, I just, now I just find really good press release writing companies and form relationships with them and have them do that for me instead. And I probably make more money doing that because, I'm not diverting all my energy. So staying focused on your core business is super important.
But how did you develop that muscle of no? Because I see that with a lot of people. Once they get to that 300 to 500,000 annual recurring revenue, there's a big threshold. Once they get, you can do that by saying yes to a lot of things. But to really surpass in 7, 8, 9 figures, you're really focusing and saying no. So how did you develop that muscle of saying no, of giving up money?
I think probably, a good portion of it is, 14 years of chasing squirrels. I just got tired of that. So, and just, really setting my eye on a prize and saying, well, if I can do that, and I'll probably make a little bit of money if I do this little side project or this partner thing, but will that get me to my ultimate goal, of making this, a real big, something that's big and sustainable and kind of knocking the competition out of the game. And that's my goal. And so for me, what I said is I said, here's my goal. So anything else, that comes across, my table, I go, if that help, will that help my goal or will it not help my goal? So if somebody says, there's a side project, hey, you want to start a press release writing company or, some other, bright, shiny thing. And I'm just like, will that help me get to my goal of, hitting this mark at this time? If it does, then I'll do it. If it doesn't, I won't. And it's really that simple. It's hard. I mean, it's probably the hardest business thing I've done because I hate turning down opportunity because I just love marketing and I just love the whole community, but and for me it's kind of like turning my back on it in a way, but I still maintain those connections, but I just don't do the side projects anymore.
Well, new ideas are fun. They're sexy. They're interesting.
Well, one thing I also do is all of those ideas, I don't forget them. I actually have a notepad on my computer where anytime I have an idea for a business or an opportunity or a money making thing, I write it down and I keep it there, and it's there forever, and it is a big giant long list. So when I do hit my goal and I look for my next thing, then I can always go back and think, oh yeah, I remember that, or this, now this will tie in perfect with that other thing I'm doing. And so I always keep it. I don't forget it, but I just don't do it. So.
Well, that makes sense. So let's circle around over to.
So actually, one good way to do, if especially when you first do it, is you can say yes, just not now.
Yes, not now.
Yeah. So yeah, sure. That sounds cool. It sounds interesting. But right now, for the next year, this is the only thing I'm doing. So, but after that, let's talk. And that's, and then put it down on a list. You can put it in your calendar. Hey, talk to this guy about starting this business or doing this project or whatever. So.
Okay. The reason why I asked that question is because not a lot of conversations happen around the no. A lot of early on stuff happens of everyone saying yes and getting excited, and then they don't realize the invisible plateaus that actually happen.
Mm-hmm.
So,
no is more powerful than yes by far, I think.
It is 10 times hard, 100 times harder to say.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of business coaches and gurus that say, "Oh, you should say yes to everything and just figure out how to make it work later on." But honestly, I mean, if you're building a business, then no is going to make you more money than yes in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what things with prReach have you had to say no to, and how has, by saying no, how has that helped you guys become the authority in the industry?
I would say just making prReach something it's not. So one of the things was, like we said, starting a press release writing company, and so, I said no to that. Some other things are just, making it something that wasn't part of the original vision, and which is really hard because you really need to kind of morph and adapt. Like so I get a lot of requests from internet marketers where they say, well, I just want to white label prReach, and and that was kind of during the build out phase, and where I could have got a lot of business doing that, but also I was so focused on making it be what it was supposed to be, that if I would have diverted my development time and all these other resources into making it a white label, then basically what I had was a half-assed wonky white label that nobody would have been happy with. And so it was, in one ways, it was killing me because I know these people could just drive a ton of traffic, but I also know that I didn't have the resources to do both, and so I decided to make it a better company. Like now, I'm starting to do that for folks. But so sometimes it's like, yeah, I can do that, but not now. And so, because sometimes that immediate money, it will cost you money in the long run. And in that case, in that opportunity, that's where I said, it's given me ulcers, not to do this now because I know I could sell this thing to death. But what am I selling? Am I selling Yugos or Mercedes? So
yeah. So from what I see from our conversation is that, one, you've focused a lot on saying no. You've been really focused on what you guys are best at.
Right.
You've focused on your numbers and actual deliverables, things that you would do daily to grow the business because you knew how much your time was worth and you knew that you needed to grow. And then to circle around, you were talking about having good content, quality, forgetting the algorithms of SEO, but just delivering good content. So let's talk about creating good content, good user experience, what you've done inside of your company.
Right. So yeah, and good content, aside from the SEO thing, it really does create engagement, and it really, that's the kind of content that does get shared, and that results in direct traffic. So that's a huge thing. Also, that's where people start. A great example of a content-driven business that's now a high 8-figure business is Clay Collins with Lead Pages. And I was in a mastermind with him, and we were talking about that, and he was actually asking, well, so we're thinking about starting to do media buys now, and does anybody know anything about it? And I was like, are you serious? I thought you guys are huge. It's like I was like, I thought you guys were spending like, $100,000 a day on media buys kind of thing. And he's like, no, he goes, we barely do anything. He goes, everything's been about content. We started out just delivering quality content. And and I actually am starting to model a lot of my stuff around the way Clay did things, because Clay would do case studies, and he did everything was a video, and it would say, well, this is how we use lead pages to do this whole thing. And he would show exactly how to do it. And he would listen to his customers, and he would create custom lead pages around what his customers were requesting, do a case study about it, and then send it out to the world. And it was just brilliant. So, and he would partner with some of the biggest people. I mean, so you'd have Laura Betterly would, say, well, this is what I need. I need to create a lead page that I can put a Google Hangouts in. And so then he made one for her, and then they do a whole case study around it, and like, how did it work? Or I think even I think Ryan Dice, they did one for Ryan Dice and Terry Belcher for their Amazon books, and it was like the highest converting at the time. It was the highest converting opt-in page, and so he just designed it around that and did a whole case study. So it was all content. So in his case and in my case, what I like to do and what I'm going to start doing more is really basing around what the customer is looking for, what are their questions, what are they asking, and then coming up with solutions for them. And then that's my content.
That's a brilliant way to look at it. I've been a lead pages customer for a long time now, a couple years, because their quality content pulled me in.
I rarely listen. I'm so ADHD now with that kind of stuff, and anytime Clay puts something out, I usually listen to it because it's always good stuff. It's not like buy my stuff kind of deal. It's talking about how to help your business, which is he's vested in your business, and that's another quality content thing. Is most people, they're always trying to like how my business is going to help your business. But if you just think about how can I help your business, then they're going to be way more vested in you and what you can do for them than the other way around where you're just pitching them, or it's just a fancy pitch.
Yeah, excellent. That's truly a differentiator, and it's nice to see our industry and the business world changing to that perspective.
Absolutely.
So, what final advice can you give to our listeners that will help them grow their business, and something actionable? What would that be?
Wow, that's a tough one. Something actionable. It sounds really simple and almost like kind of like a scapegoat, but really it's just putting one foot in front of the other, because just think about what's one thing that's going to advance my business today, and then do that thing. And it sounds like, oh, well, I'm just trying to pull something out of my ass, but that's the hardest thing for most people. They just don't, they sit around all day and they check their Skype and their email and their Facebook and this and that, as opposed to saying, what's the one thing that's gonna raise the bar for me today and for my business, and then do it. You don't even have to finish it. You just have to start it and work on it. And then if you just keep pushing forward and keep doing that, then you will succeed.
Okay. So for our listeners, what we do at the end of each podcast, I do a 48-hour challenge. So I'm going to ask you in just a moment, and we'll probably go deeper with the taking action each day.
Right.
My guess it'd be something like that. But the reason why I brought you on as the guest is because you have changed your model. You went from a normal internet marketing type of background, and you said, I'm going to create a different type of company, something with some longevity to it. And right. prReach definitely has that. And so I encourage our listeners to go and check out your website to see the user experience, to see the quality of content, and what, stepping up that level of quality does make a difference. It turns you into a real business. And so, that's something special. And do you have a mailing list or something like that where they can learn more information about press releases and learn more about your company?
Yeah, actually, if you go to prreach.com/blog, or you'll get a little pop-up. And actually, if you add that, then I have weekly tips that I add as far as, I call it prReach Academy, and it's basically on writing press releases and getting in front of the media and SEO tips and things like that. And also you get a little PDF. It actually gives you 108 reasons to write a press release, because that was one of the biggest pain points for a lot of my clients are, well, I don't really have any reason to write a press release. And so I decided a big long list that we came up with of reasons that you can do PR and write press releases. And so if you just go to prreach.com/blog, then you'll get a little annoying pop-up thing will pop up and you can do that. And there's also a lot of training on that page too. So
okay, cool. So I'm gonna hit you with the 48-hour challenge. What's something you would tell our listeners they should do in the next 48 hours?
In the next 48 hours?
They got 48 hours to do it. They listen to this. What's that thing they should do to grow their business in the next 48 hours?
I'd say figure out their 80-20 and figure out what they can do to raise their income, let's say 10% in the next, I think you can do it in the next 48 hours, actually. So I would say do a review of all your assets, figure out, create a list of what makes you money, and then do that. And then figure out, and also create a list of what can I delegate to other people that don't make money, that just need to be done. So
it's a good take. I like that.
Yeah.
Hey, Rob, thanks for joining us on the podcast today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Take care, man.
All right, see you.